Hi and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today I'm speaking with Lambert Baraut-Guinet. I probably did not say your name right at all, but Lambert describes himself as a hybrid scientist-communicator. After finishing a PhD in Earth and Planetary Sciences in France, he spent the last 5 years writing, editing, or telling stories mostly about science. Now a research associate at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada, he's back behind the bench and for the time being studies sedimentary rocks, isotopic composition while thinking about his future science communication and writing projects. Welcome, Lambert. And that's like a very
Hi, well,
Americanized version of your name.
yeah, thank you.
We were chatting on, I think on Twitter, because how this conversation originated was I was trying to update my LinkedIn bio because I'm a science writer and communicator, but I'm also a science policy professional and educator and journalist, multimedia journalist actually at this point. And so I have all these, and a neuroscientist, and I was trying to fit those all in my LinkedIn. So I posted a screenshot of my LinkedIn. I was like, hey guys, I don't know what to do with my LinkedIn. Does everyone have this many jobs? And actually, a few people wrote back. Some people wrote back trying to summarize it for me and get rid of one or two of them. And I just felt like that wasn't accurate because I want it to be a summary of every job that I have, which as much as I have a lot of different jobs and they're not all full time, but they're definitely all part of my life and part of my experience as a science communicator. So um, Lambert reached out and said that he also wears a lot of different hats. So um, in English, well, wearing a lot of different hats, that phrase means that you're doing a lot of different stuff. Like I also do have a lot of different hats that I wear. I have a lot of different hats I wear to exercise to avoid getting sunburned. But the hats that I wear as a journalist, neuroscientist, communicator, educator goes on and on. I was really grateful that I found Lambert as a person that also wears different hats. So tell us about the different hats you wear. What do you do? Does it get tiring explaining to people?
It's not exactly that I wear different hats, all the different hats all the time. It's more than like the fact that when you change activities a lot, when you change jobs, or are you taking on freelances gigs and stuff like that, or you're writing papers for newspapers or for private companies, you have to be able to explain to people what you do. And as it is changing, uh, either often or not that often, but you change activities pretty much all the time. It starts to get difficult explaining to people what you do. So you kind of that's what I did. I tried to simplify it by using like a very broad word that is consulting, to just say that I try to help people in any way I can, communicating or uh, just diffusing their science or their research to the public that they want to reach, either clients or the lay people for news medias or stuff like that. So that this is not that it's difficult to wear different hats. It's like this is not even hats at the end. I feel that way. And right now you said it. I'm back behind the bench, and I'm a scientist again. I haven't been for 5 years, and then right now I'm more a scientist than anything else. But I still want to do psychom and stuff like that. So you know that's what I mean when I'm using the word consulting or a science consultant as a job title.
What's it like to what's that transition been like and what skills have you used from journalism that you can apply to science?
When you're a scientist, you still have to um, collect, understand, and uh, communicate ideas. Right. The only thing that kind of changes is the collection of data instead of interviews or explanation from experts or from people on the streets or in the city or in the community that you're writing papers on. But it's pretty much the job it is not that different. It's just that you are using the same kind of curiosity tool and the same kind of way of thinking about a problem and trying to solve it, be it a paper you need to write or an experiment you need to do. The timeline is a bit different. The work for a scientist is a bit on a longer time frame than where when you are a journalist and you need to write papers every week. the skill that I think I gained by being a journalist weren't that different than the one I gained when I was doing my PhD. And so I feel that getting back in the lab is like not that unnatural. It's pretty natural to be honest. Especially maybe because I was writing mostly about science and environmental problems and stuff like that. So I never kind of left. I never stopped reading academic papers and interviewing scientists and discussing science with people.
I kind of can relate as well because I left my graduate program in 2013 and I never stopped thinking about my research topic. And I finally wrote an update of the field in my specific area, and I'm working with someone that's an actual scientist in the field of cognitive neuroscience of PTSD to publish it. And it's really different. It's what I'm completely out of science. I decided I'm going to start doing science independently, like research on my own time, because it just involves going to the literature and talking to people. And I volunteer at a veterans hospital, so I can have conversations with people that have PTSD, which is a different kind of access to, it's not like access, it's more like I'm already just so interested in this that I just really want to pursue the threads that I have created over the time. And but it's really different now. 10 years later into the science world, science is so much different. I feel like I'm completely out of the system. So I don't know if I could go back to this. How did you do that? And do you find that you're more effective as a scientist now that you've got this writing experience?
To be honest, this is like serendipity, or even maybe we could call that pure luck. We just moved around a lot with my partner because she's in research, and after a PhD, she had to do like postdocs and stuff like that. So we moved back and forth between Europe and North America, and then when we arrived in Saskatoon, it was because she had like a very good position here. So I was kind of wondering what I could do to just keep doing stuff around science. And I met this amazing scientist that I reached out I think on social media or just in at the university one day, and we just started discussing science. And he was interested with the experience I had before in the research area when I was doing my PhD. And yeah, it's just it kind of it didn't come out of nowhere, but it was kind of yeah, it was pretty random to be honest. And then I seized that opportunity because I mean, once you get to know and you get to work in academia in a PhD or maybe even in a master's, um, and you leave that area, it's kind of you always have something that is missing. I felt that way, and I still feel that it's a job that is so so yeah so peculiar that you always have something missing when you leave the research work that I wanted to go back, and I seized the opportunity to get back in with that scientist. So that is not something that I pursue, but it is something that I wanted to do for a while, and then I had the opportunity and I seized it. And so I
I
think
think a
that was
lot
the
of,
first part of your question, and I forgot the
yeah.
second part. I'm sorry.
The second part was, oh yeah, and I'm really interested in this question just from because I'm so interested in SciComm training. What skills have you used from journalism writing that you have been able to apply to your science?
But I mean, this is mostly prospective because I just started my postdoc slash research association like a few months ago. So I'm not that deep into my subject yet. But I feel that the being a journalist and being like a writer, a science writer for the 5 years between the end of my PhD and right now gave me a lot of confidence talking to scientists and asking questions and being able to reach out to people. And it pretty much taught me English as well, to be honest, because when I left France, I wasn't, I'm still not perfectly fluent, but I wasn't fluent at all. So doing all that taught me a lot of soft skills that I don't know if I had those when I was doing my PhD, or at least I wasn't as aware I had those when I did my PhD. And so that is very useful because I feel that a lot of people in the scientific world are starting to understand that we need soft skills to be able to communicate what we do and how we do it and why we do it to the people that are in charge of choosing what kind of society we want and what kind of research and science we want to invest in.
So now that you've have all this communications experience that you can only get outside of science, so is your goal to be a professor? And if so, in what ways do you hope to sort of create that knowledge with your students?
To be honest, I don't really know what my goal is by being back in science and in research. Still, yeah, this is kind of like I'm navigating through those opportunities by looking at the best way to be useful and at the same time doing stuff that I enjoy. So I have my fingers crossed to be able to stay in academia as long as I can, and we'll see what kind of opportunities I can have along the way. But I really hope to have time and maybe even real time to pursue science communication as well on the side. Or let's if we could dream maybe some kind of position when you can do pure academic research, pure as a like in the lab kind of research, and at the same time doing science communication or even science communication research, both at the same time. But yeah, one can dream. I think there is only one person in Canada that is doing research on geological science communication. So you see that exists already.
There are a number of people that I know that are doing sort of environmental science communication, as Gina Erico, who we've talked to on the Fancy Kama YouTube. She teaches in Hawaii and she does, I think, like marines or environmental science, and she also
Mm,
teaches science communication. So um, I think she does both. It's like science and science communication. A lot of students I've noticed seek out science communication information just
mm,
independently outside of the formal system of academia. Well, now that you're a science communicator and scientist, so I assume you can explain your research very well. So tell us about your current research. I mean, like, as well enough, because it's kind of a question mark anyway, like what
mm,
the actual research is. In general, I've noticed scientists are always like they sort of have this feeling of like they don't really know what they're doing, but they do have like a thing they're doing. It's
mm.
just tenuous. So, what's your current research and how's it influenced by your journalism experience?
What we are trying to do is like basically under South Saskatchewan and the northern Dakota, there is like this big sedimentary basin, which is like sediments and layers of sediments that are just piled up on one another, and some of them that has been exploited for oil for decades just happen to have a lot of lithium in it, and lithium is a critical mineral that Canada and pretty much all the countries around the world wants to have to do batteries and stuff like that. And so my work is we hope to be able to explain where this lithium comes from and how it has been concentrated that way in those specific layers in the sedimentary basin at the south of the Saskatchewan. So I'm using what one very specific kind of tool to trace those, which is the isotope of lithium. There is like different version of the same chemical element that is lithium, and those are just behaving a bit differently when they just interact with rocks or interact with any kind of other chemical elements, and so you can pretty much we would be able to retrace a bit of their history once we are able to get them from the ground and put them in our lab. So that's what I'm doing. And and so the second part, I'm sorry.
How is this research influenced by your journalism experience?
But I think that the research itself is not it is not that much influenced by my experience in journalism. What will be, and I hope so, influenced by the experience I had outside of academia will be the very last phase when we're gonna have to communicate our results to either private companies that will go down in the sedimentary basin to get the lithium if there is enough, and we are able to explain to them where it comes from and where it is the most concentrated, and to the public, because mining is an industry that needs to, I think, and I get the feeling that mining is an industry that needs to explain itself to the public. Um, this is probably something that our actual societies need, but we need to communicate on why we are doing what we do and how we are doing it, and what will be the results and what will be done at the end to make sure that everything is the best way we can. Yeah, our things are done the best way we can. And so that last phase might be easier because of my experience than if I hadn't worked in those areas between my PhD and now. And one very specific thing I can think of is just like I will be able probably to write the press releases and contact the journalist myself, because I kind of know some of them already, and I kind of know what is. I mean, press releases is an entire problem and solution in itself, but this is the kind of thing that I might be able to do to help my PI easier because I have this experience. And was the explanation good about what my research is, or what do you think?
Honestly, got it that it was about lithium. It's about lithium in the rocks. I know that lithium is used in batteries. I It's also used in antidepressants, in very older
Yeah.
antidepressants. But like, this is what I was thinking of as you were explaining, if your lithium is related to lithium that goes in batteries, or if it's like just lithium that is lithium a rare earth metal? Is it one of those things that we're trying to get more of for electronic devices?
No, it's not
It's
a
not
rare
a
earth
rare
element,
metal.
but it's considered as a critical mineral, which means that it's basically a geopolitical uh, label that you put on some that countries put on some like chemical elements, because you really need them for, especially right now, the transition. Uh, but you don't have that much, and there is not that much lithium available around. So the most of the production is located in South America and in Australia right now. So the other countries either need to find some themselves or be able to buy it from other countries. So that lithium is part of this big category of elements that is called critical minerals. But it's not a rarer element.
But I guess I was correct that it was one of those ones that governments and everyone's trying to get more of, so for themselves,
Yeah,
so they can make electronic devices. And so I wonder, so
yeah,
before
yeah.
when you were studying, were you studying lithium as a graduate student, and did you have this holistic understanding with how it relates to everything? Like, how did you get that? Did you get it from writing, or where did that come from in your training?
No, I just started working on lithium in Saskatchewan here. I was working more on atmospheric chemical reactions during my PhD. But I used the same kind of tool, which we call the isotopes of another element. I was working on oxygen. But this is the same. The methodology is quite close, and the way of thinking about what we can trace and what kind of processes we could just uh, try to understand with those tools is pretty much the same. Given that you want to study carbon or oxygen or lithium, those are light elements, which means that they are not very heavy, so their behavior is kind of similar. This is a tool you can use for a lot of things. Um, and during my PhD, that's when I started doing SciComm and kind of diverse stuff with the communication, either journalism or things like that. That I don't know why this is something that always appealed to me, and I really enjoyed it during my PhD, and I kept doing it after that. Uh, and, and during those years between the PhD and the postdoc that I'm doing right now. And so I don't know. I mean, explaining what scientists do is has always been something that I felt was very important in our society, and the COVID crisis and all the different kind of uh, scientific controversies that we see that we observed in the past maybe 10 or 20 years, COVID being kind of the last one, um, showed that it's very important for scientists to be able to explain what they are doing, but also what is the methodology behind the science that we do, and why some of the stuff that we consider are very important are very important, even if for the lay public it seems kind of picky or very secondary problem, or I don't know, when you talk about like error bars, or any kind of when you're doing modeling or things like that those words that we use in science that mean something to us could mean something else to the lay people, and it's to the lay people I don't like that word, for example, but to the public. And that is very important, that scientists and all the people that are working in the research area being able to explain to the public why we are doing what we are doing and how we are doing it and why is it important to do it. Sorry, I went very broad.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think too, though, because if you talk to someone that doesn't have that training, they might not be able to explain it in that way. They might be able to do like a deep dive into, in my mind, I feel like they would possibly do a deep dive into lithium. Like lithium has this structure, it does such and such, but they might not have it. They might think that it well, in lithium, lithium is in everything, so that's different. But I feel like a lot of times scientists that are doing research don't fully understand the actual impacts that it has, of their research has in the world. And I don't think it makes it dumbed down or fluff to know what your research does in the real world, but it's just there's just such a huge lack of scientists being able to ground their work in things like the politics of what's happening. So there's a political aspect to lithium with regards to different countries trying to get enough lithium. Then there's the social aspect of we're all on our cell phones. We're constantly demanding faster cell phones that do more stuff. And so they have to have different
Mm.
batteries, like the stronger battery life, possibly more lithium. And then it's like if they don't have that, then they'll have to have a different I haven't heard of any lithium batteries are like gaining prominence as like the main and like electric cars have a lithium ion or different types of
Mm.
batteries that include lithium. And so I wonder to what extent your like if we looked at people that did science communication training and then like looked at their research, like would we see that their research was more impactful than someone that just worked on the research and never made time for the science communication? Or how do you see that now that you're in this field as a scientist, the
I
communications
mean, I
background?
don't. Yeah, I get the feeling that there is some areas of research that are more easy to communicate than others. For example, you take the subject I'm working on right now. It's kind of it's pretty easy to explain, to be honest. Like it's not I could get I could dig pretty uh, 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 very deep and into very specific subjects, but to put it in perspective for the society is easy. That there are some subjects like this that are easier than others. What I did during my PhD was way more complicated to explain to the people around me, because there were no like concrete applications or any kind of thing that the people could relate on their day-to-day uh, lives, which they can do with the lithium, for example, or if you're working on some medical issues, or people that are working on specific physics problems for cars, for I don't know, any kind of like kind of applied research is easier to explain, I think, which does not mean that it's more important, just that it is easy to explain. And I don't think that science communication can improve the capacity of a given scientist to do a better, broader research. I think it's, or I don't know. To be honest, this is a two-sided. uh, Yeah, I mean,
It's
we all
definitely
can think about like very interesting and very prominent physicists that probably improve their research by doing very good and very important science communication. So maybe you can gain some insight from the public, and I'm sure a lot of scientists could gain some ideas or perspective or or insights from their interaction with the public if they were to do some science communication around their research subjects. But I'm sure you can be a very good scientist and not being a good science communicator. You can be a good researcher without being a good professor, and the other way around. You can be a very good university professor without being the best researcher. And I get the feeling that those are different hats. To get back to what we were discussing at first, uh, that you don't have to be good at everything. Um, I don't think. I mean, at least I don't think that we have to be good at everything. And that would be pretty sad though if there were some people that were good everywhere and people like I don't know like us or like me and being good at one thing and not the other would be very unfair, I guess.
There's a lot to say there because it's like I'm all for telling scientists like you have to communicate, you got to learn SciComm so that you can explain stuff better, so that you can get more grants. But at the same time, it's like you do need the rigorous like hypothesis testing aspect because that's what makes you a scientist is that. And
Mhm.
it's but you also have to have this other skill set, your more like soft skills that are like right, being able to communicate things with the goal, with a specific goal, or being able to use communication to solve problems, like, for example, in networking, trying to get people to pay attention to your work, writing, as you said, writing press releases about your research, because usually the PIOs, which are the information officers at
Mhm.
universities, do that kind of work. But if the scientists can do it, it makes the PIO's job easier. They probably will still need those people to do the information's explanation of what's going on at their different institutions, but it makes the whole process more streamlined. And I
Mhm.
think the part where it really gets more into like, it just makes the conversation easier between science and society because I don't know if I could ever be able to understand some aspects of physics. You mentioned basic research. That is really hard to explain. And that's why
Mhm.
I read this book. It was, I forget what it's called, but it was the history of basic research funding in the US. And they couldn't get basic research funded. They had to work really hard. Physicists had to work really hard to get like cyclotrons because members of Congress
Mhm.
didn't understand why they should have that. But if you say something like, oh, we have to cure cancer, that is and that's I'm in the life sciences, so that's a lot easier because everyone's like, no, we don't like cancer because everyone knows what it is. So that's a challenge. But I wonder to what extent if we took basic researchers. But the other challenge is that physicists, I feel like they are not communication. They're not people. Like they're love to be in the labs. It's like if you took a physicist, you trained them on science communication, do you think that would make them more effective? Or I can't even imagine that because the physicists I met at MIT, like if you tell them to, and we did have science communication training, but like, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think is the role of SciComm and basic sciences to help people?
Obviously, it would be very helpful for everyone if all the scientists during I don't know during your undergrad or even better during your graduate studies to have one course about like science communication. That would be amazing. But I don't feel that one course of science communication would make everyone a good science communicator. I mean that I think that I think and I feel that science communication is more something that you will learn by doing than by studying it. And that I don't know, just because there is like the contact with the public if you are doing public outreach or writing papers for journals or things like that. This is the thing that you can. It's yeah. I get the feeling that it takes time, and I don't feel that I'm already an efficient science communicator by any means. So I don't consider myself a science communicator trained and professional, just someone that is trying to learn on the go and keep learning and keep doing it because I like it. So I feel that you can train scientists as much as you want in communicating in better communicating their research if they don't have the time because yeah, a scientist nowadays has so many things to do outside of research, and they're doing a lot of administrative work. They're trying to find money, as you explained. They're trying to get grant, and they write like papers and they just have to review papers which are not part of their job. Like it's not a paid job; it's something that they do on a voluntary basis. So there is, I'm not, in an ideal society, all scientists would be very good communicators, and especially people that are doing basic science because it's the roots for everything else that we do is based on what the basic science, like the physicists and the mathematicians and the basic scientists, so to speak, have done in the past centuries. But I don't know if you could train everyone, and either is if everyone would be, I don't know, would be a good ambassador for research. I have the feeling that a research community is best served if everyone does what he does or she does best. And I get the feeling that there are people that are good with people, and those people should be put in front of other people. And I know some scientists that are not that good with people, but very good with blackboard and chalk, and very good at thinking, and way better as I ever would be at designing experiments or thinking about science. And I'd rather be in front of people and them doing science than the reverse. I think that that's way more useful for the society than if I was responsible for doing amazing science, which I would not, and they were responsible of communicating my results. So I guess in a perfect world, everyone would be trained and proficient in science communication and in science research. But yeah, I feel that nowadays we need to find a way to be able to identify the thing we do best, and try to train the people that want to do those things.
I guess bringing it back to the hats thing, it's like I've spent 10 years out of science doing random stuff that you'd never do in science. And some of it I had to get just from getting more communications experience, like communication strategy or maybe journalism. So then in my ideal world, all scientists would get at least some experience with that, just so they have this
Mhm.
perspective of, oh, here's what my research is going to do when it's out in the real world. Or, and you know, more as you think more about your research, as you talk to people about it, you kind of establish those connections as well. But I just feel like I wish there was more time for scientists to get as many hats as we wear so we can share our hats with them. Because I feel like I feel
Mhm.
personally, I feel like I wear too many hats. I love that I have so many hats, but it's hard to explain to people. I feel like I'm often doing something kind of irrelevant to science at times because scientists don't spend their time working on this. So the distribution of hats, I just feel like I've gotten too many hats. Scientists have a very hard job of doing the actual science, and it is a bit unfair to say like, hey, you got to also do this, this, and this. But that's why I'm like, what's the solution here? Like maybe if we to maybe being
Uh,
okay with having that
uh,
many hats. What do you think?
we would be very like known and rich if we had the solution to that problem, I guess. But I totally agree with you. I think in academia, all the people wear too many hats, and because if you talk to scientists, like especially assistant professors that are doing tenure track, which are, in my opinion, one of the two pillars of the academic community. The other one are the PhD students that are doing pretty much majority of the groundwork, and the assistant professors being the one that are the most active by building labs and giving new ideas because I mean, their tenure depend on it. Um, Ask them if they think they are doing too much research and everything. I think all of them would pretty much would pretty much tell you that they are spending way too much times on administrative tasks and not on research, and they're pretty much whole pressure to do a lot of other things than research itself. So I agree with you. We all wear too many hats, and yeah, and I don't know what would be the solution. Another thing I wanted to add to my answer before is I feel that our place in the research community, be it full researcher, full science communicator, and in between, which is I hope most of the people in the academia lays just in the middle or in the spectrum between those two extremes, is changing during a career. So when you start your career, when you're a grad student, you have pretty much time to do other things than your research, even if it's sometimes difficult to make it clear to your PI that you want to spend some hours or half days doing anything else than the research you are supposed to do, kind of. But then after you have to prove yourself in the research academia, so get back to those research, to those assistant professors that needs to prove themselves as a proficient scientist before they get their tenure in like a 6 years time frame, something like that. And so I'm not sure those people have that much time to spend on science outreach or science communication projects, especially if in some universities that are not way aware that the science communication part of research is very important. Maybe they can judge you to being kind of lazy or doing other stuff than research. And so then maybe when you get older and closer to retirement, or when you are an established scientist, you can spend more time writing books and going to give talks and explain the science you did your whole career in front of the public. So maybe that is something that is not that fixed and that can change during a person's career. And to get back to the kind of the solution that you mentioned, I don't know if there is one, to be honest. Like one idea that that worked for the past 5 or 10 years in Canada, for example, in the health research area, was to create some what they call the knowledge brokers positions, which are people that are specialized, like they are trained to translate knowledge from the science world to the policymakers, to simplify that. So they just go around and they meet scientists and they put the scientists at the same table as policymakers, and they just play the I don't know, you call that facilitators. So they try to facilitate the exchanges between scientists and policymakers, and in both ways. Policymakers explain to them what kind of results they want to see and what kind of question they have. So the scientists have an idea of what they have to think about when they are designing their research or their experiments or their, I don't know, surveys or anything that they do. And on the other side, scientists explain to the facilitators and the knowledge workers the research results that they obtained, so that these people or those people are able to translate it the right way to the policymakers to make sure that the results that comes from science are considered when taking decisions for the greater good or the public's good. So that is something that I found very interesting, and I don't know if the ideas spread around in other research areas other than health, and medical research. But that is one of the solution I can think of.
And there's a number, Scotland, I think. I talked to Amy Weldon, who's a science writer, and she got her master's in science communication in Scotland, Edinburgh, which is in Scotland. She was saying there's a guy in the Congress of Scotland. I forget what their government, maybe Parliament. I'm not sure what it is, but they have the lawmakers, and the lawmakers can go to a couple people. They're science communicators, scientists. The scientists can explain the laws for them. And in the U.S., we don't really have that. We have people that have a science background. Some of them are placed into Congress through programs with the research communities and industry organizations. Other people might be a scientist like me. I worked in Congress and I had a master's in
Hmm.
science, but I was an intern starting. Most people in that program are college students, and I was a master's level scientist already. So a bit overqualified for the position I was working in, but I did cover science, pretty much exclusively science and technology. So I feel then when I went to that, I was like, we need a lot more people doing that. And I think
Hmm.
scientists, firstly, they don't know that those jobs are available. They might think, oh, that's a cool job, but I don't think I have the right skills because I'm a scientist and I don't have that polished professional presence, or even just like the communication skills or the sort of professionalism. I never learned that in science because you go into lab, you're like, hey, my PI is so and so. You call them by their first name. You do your research rigorously, but it's not done in the same way in Congress. You wear a suit. You're like, hey, you don't even say hey. There's a specific procedure for talking in Congress. Everyone's like, it's just completely different worlds. So I feel like if we want to maybe sort of turn the hats into like a superposition of hats where it's like I'm a scientist but I'm also a science writer, and it kind of like if I had a hat it like can morph from science my science hat to my writer hat, but I'm actually both scientist and writer, but I also am in the nexus of both of those as well. And like maybe if we create, I feel like the main for me, I feel like we have to rethink about how we teach science and how we tell people what their jobs are going to
Mhm.
be, because many people want to be in the science communication field because they see the gap between science and society. So I just feel so burdened by my many hats. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the hats that I wear, my many jobs, but it's exhausting explaining that to people, and a lot of times people don't get it. But it's like if I don't explain one of them, that just is not. It's like not telling someone the depth and multifaceted nature of what I do. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
us that work outside of science and also in science have this problem. And maybe we can just tell our viewers that if you wear a lot of hats in science and science communication, you're definitely not alone. We both wear many hats, and I personally love it. How do you feel about wearing so many hats?
To be honest, for a long time, it felt really like a burden, exactly as you said. Like I was like my brain was trying to be at 10 places at once and thinking about like, oh, I could solve this problem by spending so much time on that issue, or I could do that, or maybe I could help those people doing this project, and that's one of the reasons what I wanted to get back into research, to be honest, to be able to have that that root that roots that are anchored in science, and then hopefully at some point being able to use some of my time and energy, or maybe some of the small amount of skills that I picked up during the years I spent outside of academia to help either scientists to spread their knowledge and what they are doing into society, or, and I think it's the bigger issue here, being able to like I feel that science communication is like being a couple therapist between science and society, to be honest. Like the trust works most of the time, but at some point there is issues, and there is quiproquos, and there is like a lot of small problems that are piling up, and at some point something is broken, and exactly what we witnessed during the COVID pandemic, I think, and I feel that it was one of the worst period for the relationship between science and society. And yeah, so I'm happy to have all those experiences, and I'm happy to be able to tell someone that I could help if they need some kind of advice, or maybe help other and younger graduate students or undergrad students that would be interested in writing science papers for a newspaper or stuff like that. I'm really happy to be able to just give them some small pieces of advice. But I'm also really happy to have right now one bigger hat than the others, and being able to tell myself and my brain that okay, that's okay to focus on one job so far for the coming, I don't know, the coming year, or the coming 6 months, and then I can have time to do some interesting and I feel important projects on the side. But I have so much respect for people that are like you, able to maintaining this um, rhythm of work, and all those different kind of stuff that you do without feeling exhausted or overwhelmed or even burnt out, because I think that it's a skill by itself, being able to navigate between all different kind of projects and small tasks and administrative work that is needed when you are freelancer, or doing things like that. If you are outside and you have that many hats, it's all right to feel tired and overwhelmed, and it's all right to want to spend more time on one of those hats for a given time if you need to. Uh, but it's also all right to, and I have a lot of respect for everyone that is able to maintain a lifestyle doing that many things.
Maybe we can just leave it at that, where we are like we have a lot of hats. We're kind of like, why do we have these many hats? But it's like we're both really grateful that we have all these different life experiences, and that's what makes
Mhm.
you a good scientist and a good citizen of the world is having lots of different life experiences and everything. So thanks so much for your time today, Lambert. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add or that we missed? Or
Yeah, maybe one thing, because I tend to, and I think we all do that. We tend to a bit maybe forget a bit of the feelings that we had in the past. And I was, when I was finishing my PhD, I was exhausted, and I was feeling like my research wasn't having any impacts and would be useless to the world. And that I spent 5 years doing something that maybe didn't matter outside of me and my family, who were very proud to have a doctor. But I mean, at that point, you just want to get rid of the thesis and the defense and everything. And going outside of academia for 5 years might be the best thing that ever happened to me professionally. I don't know yet, because I mean, only I will be able to tell in maybe 20 years. But that I learned so much by leaving the academia world and spending time doing a lot of freelancing, writing, doing podcasts and everything. And I met so many amazing people that if you're in academia and you're afraid to leave academia and afraid that you would never be able to get back in, I mean, it can happen. You can leave academia for a time and discover and try anything else. And then if maybe it's possible to have to find a way back if you want to do research, and maybe you can do research as you do on like not inside a university, but as an independent researcher, or if you get lucky and meet the right people and have a way back inside like an academia institution. So it is possible, and it's not as closed as maybe some people in research would like you to believe.
thank you so much for coming on today and talking about this, Lambert. And I hope that people
Thank you.
learned a bit about this balancing of different responsibilities. And thanks for a great discussion. I honestly feel like I've been needing to have this discussion for quite some time, and I can't believe I finally found someone to talk to me about the many different hats of SciComm and science. So thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Shiva, and I hope I stayed unfocused enough.
Oh, yeah, this was a great conversation. I think our viewers will really enjoy this. So thank you again.